Hey guys, it's Asif at thinkasif.ca. I've got Eva and Laura from Family Mediation Group. And what we're going to talk about now is the impact on, from a child's perspective, or not child's perspective, but on a child in regards to custody and child support and all that sort of stuff. So tell me, you know what? Let's start from scratch.
Yeah.
Tell me about what happens. You have children involved. What do people face when going through?
Well, it's expensive to have children, but it's definitely expensive to have children in a divorce.
Yeah.
Right? They become quite the issue. So we talk a lot about child support, right? Child support is mandated typically by federal guidelines. So typically, it's really easy. We find out what child support you have to pay based on what province you live in, what your income is, how many children you have, and how much time you spend with your child.
Okay.
So that's the criteria. We put that into a software and a number comes up.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be black and white. You still can have some creative, discussions in a mediation session about what you're paying. But that's really the starting point. Is using those criteria, getting a spit out of a number.
Okay.
And most people don't know that that's just the base amount generally that is payable to the recipient of child support. There's also additional expenses that are called Section 7 expenses, extraordinary expenses. So anything like field trips, orthodontist,
Extracurricular costs.
any post-secondary education, all of those stuff get added on top of that monthly payment. And people do get quite a shock, quite a surprise when they find out that, they have to pay based on their income. And this is in a scenario where one parent has more than 60 or 40, percent time with the child. So it's based on how much time you spent with the child.
In large part.
Right? Okay.
Who pays. So if you're close to 50-50 or 60-40 shared of residence with a child, then there's a set-off amount. So both incomes are taken into consideration, and whoever makes a larger income pays, a set-off amount to the one who makes a lower income. The extracurricular, and if that's not the arrangement, one has primary residence, one parent has primary residence, then that parent is the recipient. Is called of that child support payment, and only one person's income gets taken into account.
So there's a couple different scenarios.
A bit crazy.
Yeah, that we can chat about.
And lots of people get very shocked about that because, on top of the child support, which is, let's say, $500 or whatever, you end up paying immensely for extracurricular activities. So, for example, if your child is in rep,
hockey,
anything
is a big one.
Then you're looking at huge expenses on a yearly basis, and that's
it can get
a tough
onerous
one to swallow because the payor is paying already a child, and then it's paying additionally.
Because they're paying on top of that.
Then it can get quite expensive per month.
How long does this last for?
So typically child support, another shock. Typically child support is paid until a child finishes their first degree. So about 22, 23.
Okay.
There are some different instances. So if the child is financially independent after 18, or if the child has a disability which will render them unable to be financially independent ever, it can go past 23.
Okay.
But typically if they're in school full time, then it's to their first degree.
Okay.
There are, however, I love this because I'm honored. There are some instances where you can actually have to pay for your child's master's degree or graduate degree. And I always laugh because the judge who's made those decisions went through law school and probably had some loans and said, you know what, mom and dad's help would have been nice.
Yeah.
So that's where those decisions kind of come from.
Okay. And so even in the mediation world, this is kind of a standard practice across the board. It's not just through a lawyer. This is in the mediation world. You still have to do the same things.
Of course,
you can be more creative.
You can be more creative with the extraordinary expenses.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's not much room to be creative, I think, what we see anywhere with the federal guideline, following the federal guideline. But there's definitely room with the extracurricular activities that they would share. So, generally the rule of thumb is that you share proportionate to income. So if Johnny's in soccer, then, $100 and you proportion it out. Other parents, let's say they think that rep basketball is very, very important. for their child, so they're going to share that 50-50. And
or one thing we see a lot is
rest don't.
parents sharing daycare costs, because daycare is so expensive. Daycare
We
costs
should
are
have gone in
50-50.
daycare business.
I know.
Yeah.
Daycare costs 50-50, and then
Yeah.
sports and medical and post-secondary proportionate to income.
Gotcha.
Right? So they prioritize their bigger expenses now and worry about some of the expenses they're not paying later. And they can always come back to the
I didn't even know
table.
you could start divvying that up according
Totally.
to proportions.
You could.
Okay.
And then you can start thinking of on maybe RESP. So we have lots of parents who come to the table and they didn't have set up an RESP. But now that divorce is happening, now that this added cost of living and, separately and paying for the child has come on top, it makes them think. So we have that discussion with them, whether they have it or not. We have that discussion with them and we say, have you set up an RESP? Have you set up a life insurance? Right? Because now all those things become a reality that they need to check. They really do. So they can afford for now, if the child is 8 years old, which happens all the time in our cases, there's plenty of years that they have to prepare. So if they open an RESP account and they both, put in their agreement that they're going to start putting $25 a month towards that, then that will be very helpful down the road for the child's schooling. And they can be creative in the agreement about how to use the RESP funds.
Right.
So if the child does not go to school, then they can come back either to mediation or they can have a discussion how to use those funds. They either share it equally between the parents or they give it to the child for other needs. So they can have that in their agreement. They can have that discussion now about that future and how that future is going to look like and feel very protected about, about an item that it's a pretty big item.
So with regards to the payments that they're going to have to make, all these support payments or RESP contributions on a regular basis, do they have to have some type of insurance in place? Because God forbid something happens to that person, they're making these payments. The payor. How does that play out?
Yeah, it's extremely important. So we ask people in the mediation table and we have that conversation about securing the child support for the child. Because in family law, whether you're in mediation or you're in court, the understanding is child support is the right of the child, not the recipient parent. It's the child's money. The recipient parent uses it, right? But it's that right of the child. And so we usually have a payor getting a life insurance policy, right? And you can be pretty creative with that too. You can name your co-parent as the beneficiary, or you can name your children and then have a trustee, right? Looking over that money. So you can get pretty creative with that.
We do that all the time.
That's commonplace.
Yes, we do. And I think, we have lots of parents who are very willing to take a life insurance, both of them, in fact, take a life insurance just in case something happens to either. There is an acknowledgement that, that parent, the other parent is going to have to, support that child.
So this is where, as a mediator, you get to work with multiple partners. You get to work with your mortgage person, your accountant, your insurance, your financial planner, because there are things that they require that are, well, whether it's mandated or negotiated or agreed upon, this will help ensure that these payments are fulfilled.
Of course. And with children, right, you always want those safeguards in place. You want to have a savings. You want to have maybe a couple months of your income saved up, just in case, right? And so those are the types of conversations we have going forward, because now the family looks different. It's usually a one-income household, right, with 2 children or 3 children instead of a 2-income household, right? So the habits in spending and saving may be a little different.
Gotcha. Awesome. A lot of great information. Thank you again for joining.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll have some more sessions where we talk about other topics that come up. But thanks for joining.